Hey there, I'm Daniel McFadin, and I have a pocky full of sunshine. Pocky. It's a nickname for Fox Sports NASCAR reporter Bob Pockrass. If you're familiar with NASCAR, you're more than likely familiar with Bob. If you're new to NASCAR, you'll want to get brushed up quick. Bob Pockrass has been a NASCAR reporter since 1991. Prior to Fox Sports, he worked at ESPN and Sporting News, where I met him in 2014 as an intern. We've shared many media centers. He's usually the first one in that media center, and he's definitely the last one out. And if you ever wondered whether a track has lights, Bob's the person you ask. And then you ask again, and again, and again. The 2021 NASCAR season is going to be a very big deal. There's lots of new stuff, lots of new tracks, new drivers with new teams, and there's lots of questions to be had about all that new stuff. So I thought it would be important to give you guys the opportunity to find out a little bit more about one of the hardest working guys in the NASCAR Media Corps. So without further ado, let's get to the interview. My interview starts with me finding out some very, very shocking news about Bob's movie watching habits. So here we go, my interview with Bob Pockrass.
And the pressure's on because this is one of your first ones.
Yeah, no, you're my first legitimate interview, because the Daniel Suarez one was from a month ago. I don't know if you get to watch that yet or not.
The Suarez one. Not. I should have, okay. But I haven't.
That's fine.
I watched the first one where you told me you didn't know what you were doing.
I didn't. I still don't. I'm making this up as I go, as right. As the scholar Henry Jones Jr. would say.
I see.
Do you know who that is? Do you even know who I'm referring to?
I don't. I'm not too familiar with him. I don't think.
Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah. No, wouldn't have a clue on that. Okay. Don't think I've ever watched any of the movies like all the way through in one sitting.
What?
I mean, you have to remember, different ages,
It came out in 1981.
Yeah. Okay. So I was 12.
Okay. What movies are you into then?
I would be into comedies and more thriller type stuff, and Jay and Bob type stuff.
Jay and Silent Bob?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right. That's news to me. Okay.
That would probably be more on my speed than Indiana Jones. Yeah, I was a big Kevin Smith fan.
Bob, welcome to Dropping the Hammer. You're my first official guest.
Dropping the hammer.
Dropping the hammer.
All right.
Days of Thunder.
Days of Thunder.
Yeah.
That's how I learned mine. Some of my first NASCAR knowledge came from Days of Thunder. I was still in Indiana at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That movie came out in 1990. I graduated college 91, and I didn't know a whole lot about NASCAR at that time. And I watched that movie, and and I was like, people, they wouldn't really be that happy for a guy who just wrecked a bunch of cars like a year or two earlier, would they? After he won, I was like, really? So that's my. But that was my kind of my introduction to, okay, this is what NASCAR's all about. But I was pretty skeptical after watching it. I was like, some of that stuff's got to be embellished. Well, that was the cynical reporter in me.
At the age of 20 or 20, 22, the cynical reporter already at 20.
21. Yeah.
So what was the first race you attended a NASCAR race? First time you went to a track for a NASCAR race?
I mean, I know I was at the 92 Daytona 500.
Okay.
I don't know if I was at any of the preliminary races of that week. I don't remember, but and going back and looking at files, I saw my stories from the 92 Daytona 500. So that would be the first. I was writing about guys not being good teammates with each other. So really? Some storylines continue.
So was the 500, was that something you volunteered for? Were you assigned it, or was like, okay, I guess I'll do the 500?
Well, so when I worked for Daytona newspaper, I worked in the DeLand Bureau, which is about 20 miles west of Daytona, and really, they would just do it with a few reporters and maybe a couple of freelancers.
Mhm.
But obviously coming from Indianapolis and having covered, worked Indianapolis 500 for 3 years for various media outlets
Mhm.
as a college student, I wanted to cover the Daytona 500. I was like, this is a big event. This is our paper, we should have our reporters there. And so, they were like, yeah, you can, as long as you don't neglect any of your duties in the Bureau, you can cover what you can out at the racetrack.
So what are when you think about, I guess, that speed weeks, what are some like the images that like flash into your mind of like what stands out to you all these years later?
I mean, I think what just stands out is just the massive size of the facility. And while you know Indianapolis, I mean, I knew Indianapolis, and obviously that's a huge facility. It's just different. Like, I didn't realize that there weren't grandstands on the inside at Daytona, because in Indianapolis, there's grandstands on the inside and the outside. So
Yeah.
I just assumed it was the same for all the big tracks. So I think that that was probably a little bit, strange. I can't remember my first time up in the press box at Daytona. It wasn't for that race, but I'm sure for another race down the line, it was just amazing to see, wow, you can see the whole track, from one location, or at least, with binoculars, you could see the whole track. So, but yeah, again, I just think, and just the history of driving through the tunnel and everything was, was pretty amazing.
One question I got from Twitter was from
Mhm.
for you, is from Adria. How does it feel having risen from just another NASCAR reporter to be considered one of the best and also somewhat of a meme? Like,
Being a meme
you,
can be awkward. Look, it's nice that people recognize your work. I mean, the
mhm.
great thing, like, I mean, not to get too philosophical, but it's like some of the coolest things to me, especially when I worked in DeLand, Florida, which is a fairly small town, is that you would go out to eat. And if you had written a big story about the local college or local high school, you could hear people talking about it in the booth next to you, right? Like, talking about, and you knew that they had read your story, right?
Mhm.
And so that's kind of cool to me. So the fact that more people are reading and more people are paying attention to what I'm saying is cool, because I mean, that's why I got into the business. That's why I enjoy the business in the first place. So but there's also a lot of good reporters out there. So I
Mhm.
don't it's just there's some things that, having followed this sport since late in 1991, and having been around for most races since 2003, that that you can gather, and have a strong enough base and a strong enough understanding that sometimes you have a better idea of kind of where to go for answers.
Yeah, and the industry has changed so much since 2003, and you've been able to hold on, and people I believe view you as like the face of the NASCAR media corps. How do you have a sense of like responsibility with that?
I mean, I think you have a sense of responsibility to your readers all the time, right?
Mm,
And so I don't know that there's any additional sense of responsibility in uh, in in that sense, but there certainly is a knowledge that what you say and what you put out there is going to be read. Like, there's sometimes where I tweet something and I don't think it's a big deal, and then all of a sudden I see somebody else has written a whole story off of some info that I tweeted, and I was like, oh man, that's a little bit bigger than what I thought. And so yeah, there's certainly I mean, certainly you feel responsibility, but I think I feel that responsibility anyway, to readers. I mean, you don't want to put false information out there, and obviously I have a responsibility to the people who employ me as well, right? I
mm.
mean, and then you said the readers in some way employ you, and then you also have, and then these guys here at Fox also, you have a responsibility to as well.
Okay. When you're growing up, when did you begin to grasp what journalism was, and like what it was for
Mhm.
a community or whatever? What's your like earliest journalism based memory?
Well, so I went to Indiana University mainly as a business major,
Oh,
and
really?
then
Okay.
and then they were really kind of teaching you to work for like IBM or a big company, and I was thinking like one day I might want to own my own store of some sort. So this really wasn't doing much for me. My older brother was a journalist at the time, and
Okay.
and so I worked on the school paper. I've been editor of the school yearbook in high school. So it's like, I'm going to try the college paper at Indiana, and that's and at that time the school paper was the only morning paper in town. The Bloomington, Indiana paper was an afternoon paper at that time, and so like we were legit 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, the morning paper for a lot of people in the community, and covering Indiana sports and everything was big, and the community was big, and there was, those were huge learning times as far as what you what you did and how to go about things, because there were you're just put into so many different situations, and different, covering scandals, covering Bob Knight, covering, with the craziness of IU basketball. There's always something like where you were making, either an ethical decision or a decision of, when do you go to press, and do we run this or do we run that, and decisions on so much stuff that I think, it was at that time that, you start kind of, you learned about journalism.
That's crazy because you just seem like the guy who like came out of the womb a journalist.
No, no, I always enjoyed it, but I don't know that I saw myself doing it as a career until I really started enjoying it in college.
So at its base, like what appeals to you about journalism?
Well, I again going philosophical on you, Daniel. The one of the first stories I wrote for the school paper in Indiana was on what's called a crop walk for hunger, and I wrote about that. Hey, this is going to be happening. And then when I went to go cover the event, a couple people had the story, and I guess they volunteered to walk and raise money. And I thought, wow, the power of the press, and the and so it really is about impacting people's lives, right? It's about giving, explaining to people, now relative to racing, why they should care about something, explaining something that they don't understand, knowing that people have limited discretionary income and discretionary time,
Mm-hmm.
helping people make decisions on whether they're going to go to a NASCAR race or not go, or watch a race on TV or not watch, or root for a certain driver or not root for a certain driver. That's pretty, that's a big responsibility. And I enjoy that responsibility. And I enjoy having that little bit of impact on people's lives. Now, is it, certainly they're big fans and small fans and,
Mm-hmm.
avid fans. And, if I'm able to help them either, enjoy the sport or know more about the sport that they love, then, then that's, to me, that's a great thing to be able to do.
In the media center, it's
Mm-hmm.
everyone just jokes, yeah. If you need something, go ask Bob for it. It'll be in your bag. Like what
Oh,
if you're to give someone a weekend survival kit for a weekend of the races, what's in Bob Pockrass's weekend survival kit?
let's see, you've got Tylenol, Advil, maybe even another kind of like bear or something if somebody needs it. You're going to have some sort of Tums or Rolaids or Pepto, right? Because you can get nervous, or or you might eat the wrong thing. Um, you're going to have batteries, double A's and triple A's for scanners and tape recorders. You're going to have probably an extra. You're going to have various type of USB charging cords. Right now, it's you're going to need a few different kinds.
How hard is it for you to unplug from NASCAR compared to like you're done for the day?
Mm-hmm.
Leave me alone. How hard is it to
Well,
unplug now?
Well, I mean, I guess it's the question of what's your definition of unplug? Because I can go have dinner as long as my phone's with me. I'm I'm plugged in, but I'm mobile,
Hmm.
right? And so, I mean, which is in a lot of ways a lot better than, in my view, than 15 years ago, maybe where you were going to dinner and you didn't have access to your email or access to, and if something happened, or if you were traveling, every time you would, if you're traveling by car, you would stop every hour or something just to call in and say, hey, is there anything going on, or to check stuff. So in some ways it is easier to be unplugged but still have the connection, if that makes sense. But obviously it's more difficult to just totally unplug, and just be totally away from it. I'm not the type of person who handles being totally away from it very well.
Yeah.
If you, I mean, going to the movies and turn off that phone for 90 minutes to 2 hours is
It's a
you know,
Pandora's
is,
box when you get out of the movie.
yeah. You're
So
like,
it's
gosh, I
like,
hope there's nothing going on. Right? But so I find it more calming to be able to have it in a lot of
really?
ways, than
Okay.
some people would be. Some people like, you gotta totally get away from it. For me, it's better to have it and to be able to check it, even if you're on vacation, okay, you know, I can check it once in the morning and once in the afternoon, and depending on where I am, maybe a couple other times. But just to know that, and to know that if something huge happened, somebody would be texting you or something like that,
Hmm.
to me is a lot better. It's I feel more comfortable that way than turning everything off, because then I just be totally anxious about what's going on.
Okay, so when you open up Twitter, like last night, you texted me and said you didn't want to look at your mentions last night. So when you open up your Twitter app and you flip over to the mentions, like what does that look like for you? What is sifting through that for Bob Pockrass?
Well, I have to get through all the questions of, does such and such have lights, right?
Yes, we were going to get to
So,
that.
so, so I look at all those and laugh a little bit. And, it just depends on what's going on. If there's a controversy going on, after a while, you try to read and scan and see what the pulse is. But sometimes, me, I like to answer questions, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's just like, there's just so many comments. I can't find the questions amid all the comments, right? And so then I just, once in a while, just give up and be like, okay, I just can't go through it at the moment, or just not gonna be able, kind of scan them and see. But I mean, for the most part, it's look, I need to hear what people are saying and what people are thinking. It's part of the job.
You brought up the light question.
Mhm.
When did you become aware of that being a thing? Oh,
I'm still not aware sometimes. It surprises me that that's a thing. But man, it's been, I know that people always like to ask. So if people have fun with it, that's good. It's good for people to have fun, and I'm glad I can provide that. Like, if that's something that brings somebody a smile to their face, then that's fun. That's good. That's, yeah. Are there a lot of questions like that? Yeah. Um,
what what in your opinion, what is most misunderstood by people about journalism and also journalism's role within NASCAR?
People assume that every question has that we want a certain answer. When you ask
Hmm.
a question, you are looking for a certain answer. And a lot of times, I would say 99% of the time, I'm asking a question because I don't know the answer, and I want
Hmm.
to know the answer. And there's no, I don't know what the answer is going to be, and I'm not expecting a certain answer. I just want to know what the answer is.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of times also that people think that you're asking questions because you have an agenda personally, but sometimes you're asking the questions because it's a topic and the agenda is out there, and you're just getting an answer because it's a topic of discussion. And so, you may not believe on one side or believe on the other side, but you still feel the responsibility to ask the question and get an answer on the topic, if that makes sense.
How has your relationship with drivers evolved over the years?
Oh, I mean, I think it's, social media has changed things a lot because, now a driver used to, in order to for a driver to get their message out there, they would have to go through the media, right? They used to,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they would have to go through their PR person to send it to the media, or the PR person would get it from the driver and then send it to the media. Now a driver can do whatever driver feels like it, pretty much, right? They have that straight voice to their fans, to many of their fans, so they can control the message way more now than they ever have before. So, I think, and that's really good in some ways, but then also if you're Dale Jr., you know that every time you tweet, that's potentially somebody could write a story off of it, right?
Yeah.
And so for somebody like him, he's got to, he doesn't necessarily want every tweet to be a full story, but he still wants to get his thought out there, I would say. So I think the challenge is, so I think your relationship, before, it was, very much a business relationship. And now with social media, there's a lot of tendency for it to be more, there's potential for friendly type relationship, or a friendly, or a perception, right? Or a very adversarial perception. And so I think you've got to be aware of that, and explain to drivers sometimes some things, or crew chiefs or owners or whoever it is, just about why certain things are done, and why and why maybe this was written this way, or why it was done this way. I think the hardest thing when you talk about and I'm not sure if this is where your question was, is because of social media or whatever, but like,
Mm-hmm.
Ricky Stenhouse, when he was dating Danica Patrick, right? Every story, Danica Patrick's boyfriend, right? And people be like,
Yeah.
why is that in the headline? Well, it's in the headline because that helps with Google search. And so, if you want people to read the story on Ricky Stenhouse, more people will read the story on Ricky Stenhouse, typically, if it's a Danica Patrick's boyfriend, because more people are searching
Danica
for
Patrick, yeah.
yeah. And so
She was the more famous person of that couple.
right.
So
And it wasn't a slight, it wasn't meant to be a slight to Ricky.
yeah.
And in the URL, I'm sure it always said Danica Patrick, because you're trying to get as many people. Obviously the more people who read it, advertisers are paid by, advertisers buy ads on a website based on the number of clicks. So, you pay a certain amount per certain number of clicks. So obviously the more clicks you can get, the more ad revenue you can, that they generate. And so, so actually, more people read the story, more people will learn about him with that in the headline. Although, obviously it doesn't, it's certainly understandable that it can frustrate people too, right? And frustrate, and I'm not saying Ricky was hugely frustrated by it. I'm just using that as an
Yeah.
example of to let people understand that sometimes
Yeah.
you had to explain, like, look, this is the reason why that's in there, and it's not, you're not trying to slight them, but it's the way, it's the way you get people to come look at the website. So I would say that is, and you've always got to be aware of the trends of, of, uh, of how social media and how media is being consumed, and knowing that you may have to explain some things, or to drivers and crew chiefs and others, just about, okay, this is the way I know we were used to things this way, but now they're shifting another way. So, I mean, I know you asked just about relationships, but that's the way it
Yeah.
evolved. That's the
Mm-hmm.
way you have to handle things. And it's, and that, I mean, it's good. Drivers can react to your stories positively or negatively right away. And that's for the most part, a great thing, right? That's but you also hope that you have a relationship with somebody that, like, if they are mad like that, that you also can have a conversation with them beyond maybe a little bit of back and forth on Twitter.
Okay. All right. So let's do just a little bit of preview for the 2020 year. We're
Okay.
2021. Oh man. We're 24 days from the 500. What are you doing as you ramp up to this year? What's your eye on, and just what are you expecting from Speed Week?
Well, just checking on who's in and who's, looks like that there's going to be 44 to 46 cars at the race. So you're going to have a pretty good, some drama as far as the duels go next, for the qualifying races. So that'll be interesting. See who gets in and who's out. I'm going to be really interested, obviously, in new faces, new places. When you look at Eric Jones and Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson, for sure. And then when I say new faces, I'd also say Ben Beshore, as crew chief for Kyle Busch.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Eric Jones or Christopher Bell being now paired with Adam Stevens. I'm interested in seeing how that goes. I'll be interested to see how Ross Chastain, Chase Briscoe do in their new opportunities. So I think that's going to be a big one to watch. And then, obviously handling the pandemic and, and how NASCAR navigates it. And, will there come a point where you can have more people in the stands? Could you have a vaccinated section of the grandstands that can be full, and a non-vaccinated grandstand section where you would need to have social distancing? Like, what are the opportunities once vaccinations become more common? So, those are the things I'll be kind of looking at going into Speed Weeks. And, certainly all eyes are going to be on Bubba too, and Jordan's team and Hamlin's team, and see if they can, not necessarily Daytona specific, but in the first couple of months, and seeing, how good are they, especially, when you won't have practice after Daytona. So there isn't a lot of time for them to kind of grow as a group.
For you, among all those the drivers who are in new places, who do you think has the most at stake for the career? Because, like, just going off the top of my head, I think Eric Jones might have the most at stake, because he's been, after years at Joe Gibbs, he gets bumped to like a top 20-ish team.
Yeah. So I think I would say that, because probably a team that doesn't appear to have a ton of sponsorship at the moment. And I would say that he is probably in the most kind of delicate situation, right? You would think that Bubba, even if they don't run well, will get at least another year after this year, right? Like, they're not just gonna. So like
they're building a shop,
right? Yeah. So I would say potentially Jones is probably in the most precarious position.
Which of all the new stuff for this year, what's got you most excited?
I would probably say Coda, just because I want to see how it does. And and I think it's such a scenic place and beautiful track, and there's just so mixed reviews or mixed thoughts of how Cup cars will race there. So that's the one I really kind of want to see. It's such a great market. I would say that's the one I'm potentially kind of the most excited about.
Okay, for me, it's the dirt race at Bristol. That there's so many question marks around.
I mean, as I say, that one, I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but I know it's going to be must-see TV.
Oh yeah, right.
It's going to be. I mean, like, you are going to. That is, if there's one race, well, not one race, but if beyond the typical races that you would want to see. I think that's the other one you want to see, just to see if it's see if it can be done.
Yeah, so many people are
And the
wanting,
answer might be yes, and the answer might be no, but
but you
when
want to
you locked
see.
up, yeah, you want to see it.
It's not about the ending; it's about the journey. Um, because that, yeah, um, yeah. The so many people are like writing up. It's not going to work. Well, don't you want to see whether it works or not?
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's and it's gonna be a challenge for sure. But it's I think if there's anything NASCAR learned in the last year is that it can try things. So why
Oh
not
yeah.
try? Why not try it?
What's been the greatest, the best race you've gotten to cover?
I mean, I think the 2011 championship race, right? Tony Stewart, Carl Edwards, Tony Stewart having trouble early, rallying from the back, knowing that they'd be tied if they finished in a certain spot, and if Tony won, then he would be the champion. I think that just that whole comeback, and and just the way it happened with Tony not really thinking he was a factor 10 weeks earlier.
Okay, I got a couple more Twitter questions for you. I think
All right.
we'll call it. Like, I can't remember who asked this one, but you're recently married. You've been married for a year now.
A little over a year. Yep.
Okay, so how have you balanced working as hard as you do with getting acclimated to married life?
Well, I mean, moved to New York, so I mean, I think that was a big, that certainly helped, right? Having one home instead of two, is a is big. I don't know. I mean, when you're with somebody for 9 or 10 years before you get married, I don't know that there's a whole lot of difference, but there's sometimes difference when you're both home and working and fighting for and knowing that you're both using the internet and both draining every piece of but you're I think that's been the biggest challenge of the last year, and I wouldn't say it's a huge challenge, but it's obviously we're not used to both working in the same the same apartment for five at all, and just okay, I got an important meeting, don't bother me for this amount of time, type of thing.
Okay.
And don't stream like 6 different things while I'm on it, so that my internet doesn't go out.
Okay. This question is from Luis Torres. With the pandemic still ongoing, what's the ideal way for people, mostly others, but also personally applicable, of networking when opportunities of in-person interaction are difficult at this time?
Well, obviously social media helps, right? But I don't I think the best thing is to be aware and understanding of of people's schedules and what they're going through, right? And being aware, like, okay, this might not be the best time to contact them. Maybe doing a little bit more research than you would before, because before, if you saw them and you could tell like whether they were busy or not, right? And now you don't know if somebody's busy or not. So I would say that the key is knowing when somebody is has time to talk, or making sure that when you're trying to network, saying, look, when is a good time? What are the best times? What are the or what are the worst times? When should I not bother you?
Okay. All right. Okay. This is my last question. So you've been doing this since 1991, the year I was born. In your career so far, what do you consider your the achievement in your career that you're most proud of? Whether it's a story you wrote or anything like that.
It's so tough. I mean, I think the fact that just sticking around for this long is an achievement, because so much has changed, right? And
Like,
it's
yeah.
it's I didn't grow up with a cell phone right in my hand. I didn't even go to college with a cell phone in my hand. So just being able to be in the position I'm in, and to be able to adapt to everything that has of the way media is distributed and consumed, to me is the biggest achievement, because it's not easy to change. It's not easy um, to adapt. And we used to have um, arguments at the newspaper of like, oh my gosh, do we put this story on the website before it's published in the newspaper? Like that was a big discussion. Like that was a big argument. Like, well, who's going to buy the newspaper if people can look online on it for it? And then there was a discussion. Well, do you post something on Twitter before you can post it on the website? And these decisions keep evolving. Do you post this video on? Are you posting these videos of news conferences before actually saying what the news conference was about, or explaining what had been said? Like, so I think adapting to all these different steps, to me is the biggest biggest accomplishment. There've been a lot of there've been many a lot of stories that I've enjoyed writing and reporting on and everything, but I think just being able to last and being able to continue to tell those stories is the biggest thing.
There you have it. That's my interview with Bob Pockrass. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I had a good time talking with him. I hope you learn a little bit more about Bob, NASCAR, journalism, and what makes Bob tick. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Daniel McFadin, all one word. And you can also follow me on Patreon at patreon.com/Daniel McFadin. I already have one contributor there, who's Sarah Cohn, where she's contributed $3. So like, as I said in the last episode, aside from some freelance stuff, I'm largely unemployed. So if you like what you got here with Bob and want to see more of that, making this little endeavor easier, you can contribute $3 at Patreon. And like I said, I hope to have if enough people contribute, I hope to build on that and make this a little bit more fun for you guys. And again, you'll be able to hear more from Bob Pockrass when the podcast episode drops next week. We're on the podcast that I host with my good friend James Crow, who made the title card for Dropping the Hammer. So, all right. Thank you again for watching episode 3 of Dropping the Hammer. I'm Daniel McFadin.